Last century, humanity faced a global crisis. The power madness of a few, combined with inflated egos, led to an almost global conflict, World War II. For the best part of 1 decade, people did what we seem to do best: obliterate each other. During this decade, the fighting resulted in an estimated 80 million fatalities, and around 65 million were displaced as a direct consequence of this madness. On top of that, collateral damage in the trillions was caused in many countries, both to the infrastructure and the natural environment. Finally, in 1945, after the majority of this madness stopped, the world came together and formed the United Nations, a global body of governments around the table trying to sort disputes through negotiations rather than wars. Today, 79 years later, we are facing another global crisis that makes World War II look almost like a spat between neighbors. This time, all of us, every single living being, is involved in this conflict, the fight to protect our environment. Even before the Industrial Revolution began, there were scientists that tried to ring the alarm bells about the selfish and wasteful way we use our natural resources. The advent of first the steam engine during the 18th century and soon after the internal combustion engine during the 1900s speeded up our productivity exponentially. Rapid progress in the late 19th century in electrical engineering enabled us to much better utilize generated power with more flexibility, to the point that today most of us can't imagine a world without the convenience of electrical power, available on demand in an unlimited quantity. However, for the longest time, the means to generate this power was by converting the energy stored by Mother Nature in different forms of biomass, be it wood, coal, oil or gas. We have long known that by burning this biomass, much of the residue is being released back into the environment. The use of biomass burning engines on a global scale has over time increased to a level that even us ignorant humans have noticed a definite detrimental impact on our environment. This was the main reason that in 1997, during a meeting of the UN in Kyoto, the global community decided to take remedial action to try to mitigate the rapid deterioration and poisoning of our environment by putting controls into place to reduce the harmful gases that all our industrial and personal activities generate. The Kyoto Protocol was adopted by 192 countries in 1997, and its recommendations were put into place in 2005. This was the plan, but this 8-year delay between deciding and doing should have been a big red flag. Fast forward to 2015. Another of the yearly meetings of the UN Climate Club, this time in Paris. Over the intervening years, not much of what was planned and proposed in Kyoto was actually put in place. Some efforts were made by some countries, but as a whole, it started to crystallize that at the bottom line, commercial interest and political unwillingness boycotted most of the actions at the scale needed to make a serious impact. However, another major effect of the apparent lack of actions at a higher level was that all around the globe, communities and populations started making their voices felt in different positive ways, from boycotting products and corporations, to forming action and pressure groups, to self-help networks, tree planting clubs, waste collection initiatives. People became more active and vocal in their dissatisfaction that, at a higher level, nothing much seemed to happen, whilst at the lowest level, the negative impact of our collapsing ecosystems was felt the most. Back to Paris. It was at this meeting that the Paris Agreement was formalized. By this time, most of the established and French scientific community was going apeshit. The powers that are seemed to listen, at least on paper. The main point of the resulting agreement was the decision to keep global average temperatures below 1.5 C compared to pre-industrial levels. To stay below 1.5 C of global warming, emissions needed to be cut by roughly 50% by 2030. Everybody in the room signed the paper, said yeah, no problem, we can do that, linked arms for the PR photo shoot. But looking back now, from 2024 to 2015, another 9 years, by the time they got home a week later, most of them seem to have forgotten what they just signed and agreed on. We always say hindsight is easy. Yes, it is. But it also means that we can look at what was discussed, agreed on and promised, then look at what actually has happened and say, we, the ordinary people who put these policymakers into power to make decisions and take actions on our behalf, to the benefit of all, have been royally screwed. The last few years have been terrible across the globe in terms of environmental degradation and disastrous impacts. Our changing climate does not discriminate where it hits and whom it affects. Natural and man-made disasters happen all over the globe. However, it's what we call the global south that suffers the most from the after effects. Why? Because most of the resources in the past have been concentrated in the global north, creating a much better infrastructure to deal with them. Even now, when we look at the numerous funds that have been set up by the UN and other global bodies, we still see this imbalance on how and where these funds are spent. Billions is being poured into inventing new, unproven, high-tech solutions to remove a few thousand tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. To use the natural alternative by regreening some of the land we degraded, or improving our farming methods, especially in the global south, would be much easier and quicker, but funding for this is nowhere near enough to make a measurable impact. We hail young, innovative entrepreneurs that send out ships to scoop up a few thousand tons of plastic crap we poison our oceans with. Well, at the other end of the waste chain, we don't put policies into place to reduce the billions of tons of waste in the first place. We reinvent agriculture by financing and funding in the multi-millions high-tech multi-story aquaponic factories close to urban centers to grow lettuce and herbs in the name of food security and to cut down supply chains. While at the same time, most small-scale farmers, and not just in the global south, have many solutions at their fingertips and are desperate for investment. The farce at the institution level has grown to the extent that last year, Global Climate Get-Together, COP28, was held in Dubai, one of the top countries that got rich on fossil fuel. To top it off, they put the boss of the national oil company in the top seat of the meeting to lead the world towards a more sustainable future. Ironic? Oh yes. Conflict of interest? You betcha. Surprising? Not at all. And the result of over 70,000 official delegates having a jolly for 10 days? Apart from finalizing a few long overdue actions that were agreed on in Kyoto and Paris, their main achievement and reason for celebrating and dancing in the aisles was to change the commitment of ending to transition away from our dependence of fossil fuels, but still without any clear and binding time frame or agenda. Now, isn't that brilliant? Just how can we, the people, take these guys seriously? This world of ours moves on two levels. The top 1% who are the controllers, corporations, policymakers, media, mostly all connected by self-interest, greed and ego. The rest of us, more or less ordinary human beings who suffer the consequences if and when the 1% screw up. It looks like it is up to us, the majority, to do ourselves what our policymakers, which are financed by the corporations and use the media to control us, are not able to achieve. Now, before it's too late, we have to rethink our approach. Only depending on our leaders to guide us in the right direction in this war for survival isn't working. We as individuals need to do what our leaders failed to do. Learn from our past mistakes. And each and every one of us has to look at themselves and say, I am taking responsibility for my actions. Then ask, what can I do to help heal our Mama Earth? Just imagine, if all 8 billion of us take even small positive actions, multiplied by the sheer numbers, we actually can achieve much more rather than waiting for the powers that are to get their corporate act together. We also need to adopt a more holistic approach, as no individual problem can be solved by individuals' actions. Just like in nature, everything is connected. From observed good practices around the globe, we know what works, what can be done, and what is good for the planet. And in the end, what is good for the planet is good for us and the generations to come. If you agree with us that we the people can achieve a massive positive impact by taking personal responsibility and do something now, please like, subscribe and share to help us grow this channel. Thank you.